With the best will in the world, a shot deer doesn't always drop on the spot. Usually the stalker can find it quickly. But if not, who are you going to call? Maybe it'll be Isla the Black Lab. Isla is 14 months old and training to be registered with the UK Deer Tracking and Recovery Group, with her owner Nobby Clark.
I've got one dog on already. He's an 8-year-old. This one's going to be my next tracking dog, the replacement for the one I've got at the moment.
Head of the group is Tony Lowry.
We provide a free service for stalkers when things go wrong, if they haven't got their own dog, and sometimes if they have got their own dog.
So how do you train a dog to follow a wounded deer? Well, someone has to play the part of the deer, and today that role falls to Rob Eames. He wears these special shoes with the feet of a freshly shot deer clamped behind the heels. Tony checks the settings on his GPS, and we're off.
We've laid a track which is probably 400 or 500 yards long, with 2 or 3 turns in it, and try to make it as realistic as possible with minimal blood. There's no more than 50 ml of blood in that pot which Rob's been using. We expect all our handlers to pass a test which is at least 20 years old. So this test this morning is for a puppy really. It's a young dog test, and they have to pass that before they go on to a 20-hour test. So obviously, and you've got to put the time into your dogs. They've got to be quite experienced.
It's a combination of everything. I'm looking at what the dog's doing, the reactions from the dog, so I can know whether she's on or off the track. As we go along the track, I'm looking for sign as well. There may be some blood. There's some blood down there and some hair. Or other signs along the way, possibly a wound bed where the deer's run so far, laid down and stayed there, and something's moved it on. I'm looking for all these signs all the way through. I'm also looking ahead of the dog, in case I see the deer. There's blood on this tree. Maybe dead in front of us, in which case we've got no problem. If it's alive and getting up in front of the dog, I've then got a situation which I need to deal with. Am I going to release the dog to chase it, or call the dog back in and take a shot at that deer? It's all about minimising the suffering from the deer. So I don't want to keep tracking it, and pushing and pushing and pushing the deer. If it's dead at the end of the track, then it's easy. But we train to deal with a live deer as well, the dogs and the handlers. All she's doing is associating the smell of the deer to a reward at the end. Doesn't think so much of I'm following a muntjac or I'm following a fallow. She's following a smell that she is associating with the reward that comes at the end of it. Her reward is normally a leg and some food. Being a Labrador, she likes the food. Come on in. Yeah, that was clever. That was clever. Was it clever? It's one of the most important bits of the training is the reward at the end. You've got to make a big fuss. So they really want to get to the end. For a young dog, I was quite happy with that. She's struggled on a few bits where it went from like a lot of vegetation, which is quite easy to track across. There's the track there where it's hard and dry and bare. We seemed to struggle a little bit until we actually got across the track, and then we were off again. We went from the vegetation to the dry mowed grass. It makes it a lot harder for her, because part of the scent picture that she's following is going to be the bit of disturbance. So the green vegetation's easier to track on than it is on the hard-packed, dry ground. She sort of went left to right, and then all of a sudden turned left very sharply, very quickly, which was different to what she'd been doing around the rest of the field. That's part of reading the dog. Yeah. And there's a few other points where we struggled a little bit. And when she was back on, her nose goes down, and she just pulls, as opposed to having a few steps up it. Not really pulling too hard, nose comes up. But when she goes back onto it, the nose goes down, she pulls hard, and just keeps pulling. Which, for me at the moment, the stage of training that she's at, that tells me she's back on the track. No, on the whole, I'm quite happy with that for the stage she's at in her training now, so...
Part of the handler's training is to analyse a simulated shot site. It's a sort of stalking CSI.
So here we've got a conical shaped bone, which, again, this is quite a typical sort of scenario of a lower leg shot, where you don't get a lot at the actual shot site, you might get a tiny bit of blood, short hair off the lower leg. The round bone is a good indication that it's been shot sort of lower down in the leg as opposed to ribs, which are a flat bone. If you sort of talked about a normal chest shot, where you're going to be hopefully hitting lungs, there's going to be probably a bit more blood sprayed out around the back there. You're going to have longer hair from the side of the deer. You might find a tiny bit of rib bone, not that often, but it's more the small chunks of lung and, you know, the nice bright blood. Things where you might get a gut shot or liver, the blood's going to be a lot darker if you've caught the liver, but the main bit is going to be where you see stomach content, which would be a green, and which for a dog to find is pretty easy because of the smell that's coming off of it. The flies are actually, you know, they're really onto any blood and bits and pieces like that, especially a gut shot. This time of year, there'll be flies on it within minutes. And again, it can be quite a real handy thing in actually locating a shot site.
They're not always going to be dead. In a case of just track them to a dead deer, sometimes they'll still be alive. So rather to try and stop extending suffering, it may involve a chase or on a mobile deer. And when they get to the end, they need to be able to deal with it. Some of the dogs here you've just seen have been baying, as in barking, and will hold the deer in one position. They'll move around, barking, and just keep that deer there until we can get there to dispatch the deer. Some of the dogs will naturally bay and then grab hold of the deer, but it's the dog's character that will determine that, not necessarily the training. I mean, some of them have got that aggression and that confidence to take a deer down, whereas others will just bay. Either one works for us, but it's dealing with that live deer at the end, and it will give us a chance to control the situation, slow it all down, and then safely dispatch the deer, should it be alive at the end of the track. We teach them to, well, I use a leave command, but whatever command it is to come off that deer is part of what we need them to do. Part of what we need them to do. Yeah. We don't particularly want to be shooting over the dog. Yeah, sure. We don't want to be wrestling with the deer. Some situations you need to use a knife. So we don't want dog and deer still wrestling and a knife flying about, or trying to shoot the deer with the dog still attached. We need that a basic level of obedience to have the control of the dog, to hold it in place for us to be able to deal with it. And when we've got calmed down, everything's under control, we can call the dog off and then dispatch the deer.
So what's the message Tony wants to get out to stalkers across the UK?
Basically, if you're a stalker and you haven't got your own dog, or you have got your own dog and you think what's happened is beyond your dog, then please give us a call and we will come out and do our best to find it. By all means, go and investigate the shot site. It may give you some idea of where the animal's hit. It's not always where you think it's hit sometimes. But yeah, give us a call and we'll try and help.